Today we are remembering Jose Fernandez, a player of a generation, an absolute king and an icon for the Marlins and for baseball. We're going to dig into some of our favorite moments of Jose Fernandez's career on today's Locked On Marlins with Shaun Barrett.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast with me, Peter Pratt. Don't forget to follow me, of course, guys, on Twitter at Miami Marlins_UK. Please subscribe to the pod. It's available everywhere and for free. And there's 5 episodes per week, Monday to Friday. And also, there is a YouTube channel if you're watching. Hello, welcome. You will see Shaun Barrett is back in the house. It's the Tuesday episode. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. Today, we're talking Jose Fernandez. We are going to look back at some of our favorite moments. Before we do that, Shaun, I'll let you drink your water. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. It is water indeed. It's a tough topic for me, but it's something that is well worth remembering every year. And he's not to be forgotten for sure.
No doubt about it. Let me set the scene. Very briefly, and then we'll kind of get into some of the favorite moments and what Jose meant to us and to other Marlins fans as well. And I think it's going to be a difficult conversation, but a fun one as well. It's always good to reflect on Jose and the joy he brought to baseball fans. You may have seen a tweet about this the other day. I've only ever seen one Marlins game live, only once, and it was in May of 2016, where I was over there, and that's where I discovered for the first time the Miami Marlins. Went to the ballpark on a family holiday, and it was a rainy day, rainy Tuesday against the Diamondbacks. But Jose Fernandez was pitching, starting that day for the Marlins. I had no idea who Jose Fernandez was. Didn't matter. I just sat there and enjoyed what it was. But in the only game I've ever seen, Jose was pitching. So I can sit here now proud to say that I saw Jose Fernandez pitch live. And I went back and watched that game in full last offseason just to remind myself of what I saw. Because I remember Stanton hitting the home run, but I couldn't remember anything else about the game. Nevertheless, I feel fortunate to have, seen Jose pitch. And that was the moment where I started following the fish. And, I was then starting to watch the games relatively regularly. I made that decision at that point. I was like, I am now a Marlins fan. From here on now, I've decided to be a Marlins fan, and I'm going to roll with it. And it was a fun team to watch and, to cover that year, and you're starting to get into baseball, learning the rules. It's another topic as well that we'll get into maybe later in the week, the fact that the UK, one of the mainstream UK TV channels, the BBC, is now having baseball free to air for British audiences for the first time in a long, long time. And so, that's a massive thing for us in the UK. Not to go off onto that topic, I do want to cover that in another episode, how big that is for baseball. But the reality was, I really didn't know the rules of baseball. I know the overall rules, but I didn't have anyone there sitting next to me to explain to me what was happening. And I still don't know what a balk is. I still don't. I've watched the game for 6 years and I still don't. But nevertheless, that news, I remember the news breaking 6 years ago when I woke up, saw it, and very, very emotional news. Shaun, you've been a Marlins fan a lot longer than me, for sure. Let's not start with the tragic events. Let's go back. Let's look back and just kind of, if you can, shine a light on what Jose Fernandez meant to you as a fan of Florida Marlins. As you tracked him and all that he was for Marlins fans.
So he was the most electric player I've ever seen, and I don't think I will ever be able to say that of another person. I think he will be that number one guy for the rest of my life. He was so much fun. His stuff. I mean, I don't even want to talk about the numbers. I have no interest in talking about his numbers.
No stats from Shaun?
Yeah,
what
exactly.
the hell?
That's what he means to me. the numbers were fantastic. The stuff was filthy. Everything that anybody talks about Jose now is talking about his personality, the life he had, the very short life, but the life he had, the story from him defecting from Cuba and all that entailed. The fact that he was brought up to the major leagues without ever pitching above A plus. He never pitched in AA, never pitched in AAA. He was brought up, and I remember, even this is going way back, but I still remember people thinking, "This is insane. I mean, this he's got no chance." And yeah, from the very first game, I remember watching it and thinking, "My God, this kid has got it." He was just such a great player. The smile, the personality, the antics were brilliant. He was, in my eyes, he is the greatest player I've ever seen. And I don't say that, that's not hyperbole. That's not. I genuinely think that he would have been a multiple Cy Young winning pitcher. Because he had the stuff, he had the length. He'd go deep into games. In his early career, he would strike out so many guys that his pitch count would go up too high, and they tried to get him to pitch contact a little bit more because the stuff was too good. He was simply the best player I've ever seen.
Has anyone come even close, in your opinion? I mean, I know you watch a lot of Marlins baseball, obviously, but has anyone come close in your opinion to Jose? Since I guess. I mean, there's been some great seasons and there's definitely some great pitchers knocking around, but I think Jose was a shining light and a special guy that I'm not sure has been matched by anyone else. To be honest with you, what about you?
I mean, there are some great pitchers out there, and everyone's going to say, Scherzer and Noah Syndergaard had a few good years. There's a lot of good pitchers out there, but what I think that Jose brought to the table wasn't just that raw stuff, but it was that energy. He was a leader in the clubhouse. He literally brought that energy, and it didn't matter whether it was on the mound, whether it was his at bats. If you've got to go back and watch some of his at bats, they're fantastic fun to watch. Him in the dugout cheering on the team. He had that energy, and I think that whole package is something that I don't see having been matched since. And I'm a Marlins fan, and you could say that I'm biased and things like that, but that is my genuine belief that he's the greatest pitcher greatest player I've ever seen play, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny now, right? Because obviously, the universal DH takes away the pitchers having to hit. Like you said, some of his moments, key moments, were him hitting, which was funny. There was obviously a big ruckus and furore around his first home run, which was it against the Braves? I'm not sure it was against. I think it was the Bravos.
It was, yeah. And Brian McCann, go to hell.
Exactly. And someone else shared a clip with me on Twitter, actually, saying it was one of his favorite Jose at-bats and moments where he took a big cut, fouled one off. It was up in the zone. It wasn't a meatball by any stretch. It was up in the zone, and he fouled it off. Must have been looking to go deep, and he just went off in a Spanish tirade, just swearing at himself and going bananas, which was pretty funny. And it was all caught on the microphone as well. But we had the fire. And he had the desire as well. That's the thing that kind of stood out to me. He wanted to have fun, and was ultra competitive too, whilst having fun, and wanted to win, and equally enjoyed the good times, is what I'd say. When that home run goes against the Bravos, if you go back and watch that, it's not like he was going bananas. I mean, it's nothing like, it's not Acuna level stuff. It was like, I'm just going to see if it's going over. And if it does, I'll jump around a bit and, I'll enjoy it. I mean, we should enjoy the moment. But Brian McCann in that moment, what was McCann doing? It's one of the worst moments in baseball I think I've ever seen. It kind of summed it up for me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, he looked at it a little bit. But was his last game of the year in his rookie of the year season, his last game, and he hits a home run. You can't blame a kid, and he was a kid, for looking at it a little bit. It was no, he didn't pimp it. There was no Kuna hot dogging it around the bases. He just peeked at it a little bit. And Brian McCann, obviously, he's the bastion of the unwritten rules for baseball. I'm sure he doesn't get paid for it. And yeah, I mean, there was a big, it ruined the moment a little bit, but the Braves, they don't like to have fun, do they?
They don't. I mean, times have changed for the Bravos now. The shoe is on the other foot now. That is for sure. But yeah, that definitely was one of my favorite moments, and rightly so. Listen, you want to, you got to celebrate your first home run. I'm glad baseball is progressing beyond that moment. But Jose was a 2-time All-Star as well. 2-time. I want to say 2-time.
Yeah, I think that's 2 times. Yeah,
I'm doubting myself.
Questions at me.
Yeah, I know. I probably shouldn't be. Let's check this out. Yeah, 2-time All-Star, 2013. Like you said, that was his rookie season, right? And then in 2016 as well. So 2-time All-Star, as well as Rookie of the Year, rightly deserved as well. I mean, Jose Fernandez. Let's kind of think, how big of an impact this actually had on the Marlins, in 2016 and maybe the path they were on, because we all saw the guys that were around at that time. There was a lot of talent in and around that clubhouse. There was something brewing, I felt, maybe in Miami, which is what maybe got me hooked. And then obviously, and Jose was a big part of that. I guess it goes back to the old statement of, well, we're just 2 arms away or whatever. And I think probably they were just a couple of arms away. But overall, as we kind of reflect now, just how big of an impact that had, this tragedy, for the Marlins themselves. I think for the players involved too as well. I do think maybe a lot of players, it really badly impacted them. So just a huge monumental but sliding doors moment, I sense, as well for the organization, for the players. But it's hard to think. It's hard, ifs and buts. But if that tragedy didn't occur, how things could have been differently for this Marlins organization, I guess, from 2016 onwards.
Yeah, it was absolutely massive. It literally changed the dynamic of the organization, not just on the field, but it was a case of the team was sold. The team was in the process of getting sold not long after that. I think that was the end of it. I think the way that Jose had been brought into the club and how he and Loria, they had a relationship. They had this I don't want to say father-son relationship, but it was a very paternal relationship.
Yeah.
And I think his death, it killed any idea of Loria wanting to be involved in baseball, and some would look at that as a massive positive. But it's a shame that's how it occurred. I mean, the team was never going to win without him. I think the bats were, it was a good offense.
Yeah.
And you're right to say, they were literally a couple of pitches away. And some people, laugh at that nowadays, but they were a really good team. And Jose, going into his prime, because he still wasn't in his prime. And that's why I feel like he is, in those early years, his 20s. And his 20 to 23 years were just electric and special. What he could have grown into, what he could have developed into, is out of this world. And you talked about the work ethic. I remember, and I don't know why I remember this, but I remember reading a story on MLB.com, and I'm sure it was Joe Frisaro who wrote it.
It would have been, I guess.
Talking about one of the off seasons where Jose had gotten into cycling. Just randomly gotten into cycling. One of his friends must have cycled, and he was doing these Tour de France-esque cycles through the off season. Wow. He was just a guy that just had this motor, had this energy, and it's an energy that you just don't see anymore. Baseball's now. I'm a little bit older as well, but baseball now feels a little bit more business-like. It feels a little bit more, like a transactional process. back then, Jose, that didn't matter to him. I'm sure he would have. Yeah, I'm sure he would have pitched for free.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was going to be a really special player, and it's something that still breaks my heart that what happened to him.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a couple of follow-ups I've got for you. We'll do the ad then after, and then I want to talk about the actual, immediate events after as well. But before we get into the ad break, do you have a favorite Jose game? Something that stands out to you specifically? You may not, but there may be something that stands out to you, a performance, an outing of his that you were like, wow, that was the one, or that's the best I've ever seen him. It may not be easy to ask you that on the fly either, so I should have probably prepped you for that. But nevertheless, if there's something in the forefront of your mind, please do share.
There isn't, because I think every start, I literally in the off season get to a point where I'm struggling for lack of baseball. So I watch. You can get pretty much all of Jose's starts on YouTube,
Yeah.
and I will watch them start to finish each off season, because they're such fun to watch. But yeah, no, there's no individual game, or like I said, I didn't even look at the stats. I've not even opened it up. I have no interest in talking about the stats when it comes to Jose, because that's not what he meant to me. And believe me, the stats are special.
Yeah, no doubt. We definitely, for you not to go into the stats, that to me says a lot in many ways. One final question before the ad break anyway, and we're running over on that, but it doesn't matter. The Marlins would have had a decision to make on Jose, and they would have had to have made it already in terms of the contract situation. And I mean, if things continue to go down the trend they were trending with him, boy, oh boy, it could have been a very interesting contract negotiation. Do you think the Marlins would have extended him? Would they have found a way to extend Jose Fernandez? Or would we have had to have been feeling the pain, knowing the fact that they were going into a rebuild perhaps? And I appreciate the rebuild may not have been required, but, what's your gut feel on it? Do you think the Marlins would have found a way to get it done and kind of lock Jose up? Or do you think it would have kind of been inevitable that he would have been moved on and be pitching for someone else at this stage?
Yeah.
I don't know.
This even now, that would never have happened. He would have gone into free agency for sure, but they would have traded him in the last year. His contractual buying power would have been massive. Like, the Yankees would have been beating down the door with God knows how much money for that era. Guys like that didn't get locked up back then.
No.
To the degree that they do now anyway.
No.
The Marlins would have, and I don't want to misquote him too much. I don't much care because it's Samson, but I have heard him talk about the idea that if they couldn't have got him locked up, they would have just thrown that arm out. He would have gone 250 every year.
Yeah.
And I don't doubt that he could have done it. I don't doubt that he would have been an elite doing it. No, the Marlins would have juiced that arm for all they could have got. On a free agency for sure.
Yeah. It would have been interesting to see how it played out. But like you said, probably an extension via the Marlins would have been unlikely. But nevertheless, guys, it's our first ad and only live ad of the day. And it's late, so apologize for that. But we have graphics. We have graphics to help you if you're watching on YouTube. You see, there's new Bet Online graphics. How about that? And this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at betonline.net. And it's your number one source for football betting info this season. Yes, sir, they are plowing ahead on the football betting. Why not? It's a lot of fun. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events. It includes, of course, MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to betonline.net, use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And Shaun, where we're going to end is we've talked about what he meant to you and the fact that I actually, by luck, got to see him, which was wild. And, your view that the best player you've ever seen, which I don't doubt. And it's the only regret I have really is that I wasn't closely following the team like I do now. I know what it feels like to watch Sandy go out every fifth day, and I know how much joy that brings me. And I sense that it was a similar, slightly enhanced feeling with Jose. What impact did he have on the ballpark as well? That's another, wrinkle to this. Did the fan base show out for Jose maybe in a different way than they do now for Sandy? I mean, Sandy still got 15,000 in the ballpark on Saturday in what is the most meaningless September game ever. So I think Sandy still does have a draw, but maybe Jose a little bit more than that, I guess. I don't know. What about you?
He was the last player and probably the main player that ever moved that needle. So,
Mm,
so Sandy, now fills a section, Sandy's Beach, and I love
yeah,
Sandy's Beach, and I love Sandy, and
me
the
too.
fact that he doesn't draw fans to the stadium isn't a reflection on him, but Jose brought the stadium. Like you get your normal 5, 10 thousands for the games for
Yeah.
every game, and then every 5 days you'd get 25,000 people there.
Wow.
Plus, he bought. It was an event. It was literally an event. And I've talked about before a lot about the idea that the Marlins will always struggle to draw because Miami is an event driven location. Like
Yeah.
there's always something to do. So
Mm,
you've got to be at the top of your game to draw people.
mm,
That's what Jose was.
yeah.
On the nights that Jose was pitching, there wasn't an event in that town that could top it.
Yeah, it's such a great point, and again, that's been another kind of common wrinkle on Locked On Marlins this year. Various guys talking about the market that the Marlins operate in. Um, so let's flick into it then, because I do think it's good to reflect, and particularly now with the news that Donnie's obviously moving on. I think Donnie played a massive role at the time, which would have been an extremely difficult time. But for you personally, how did you learn of the news, and what was just your immediate impact, or what did you do when you found that out in, I guess, probably the morning time for
Yeah,
us in the UK?
yeah. No, I remember the day. So yeah, I was at my sister's house. We are having breakfast, lunch. It was early in the day, and I got a message from an American friend. Just said Jose Fernandez is dead, and I was like, shut up. What kind of information is that? It's not worth joking about.
Mm.
And yeah, check the news. That would have been too early for Twitter, wouldn't it? So yeah, I'm not sure where I would have found that news or confirmed that news, but it was,
MLB.com.
yeah, probably was. And yeah, no, it was a tragic day, and I don't mind saying that I cried for
Yeah.
good portions of that day and the next day. It was just, yeah, a horrific event for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And I guess you weren't the only one, Shaun, to be honest with you. The fact that, we only had to see, how it played out. And I must say, the press conference that then followed, where, effectively the team was surrounding, David Sampson was in the middle there, Mike Hill was in the middle, Donnie, the kind of leaders of the organization were surrounding the players. And it was clearly just such a tough moment for all of them. But I must say, I did feel that they handled it really well in terms just everything that went on for me felt as good as it could have been. And we then kind of turned to the next day, and they obviously then play a game, and we have to also applaud the Mets too. I think the Mets equally played their role in that too, and clearly understood the impact and the situation and everything that was going on. And the Mets played their role. But boy, oh boy, Shaun, I must say, you can't watch that D Gordon home run, and it leaves you questioning, doesn't it? Just the world and the way the world works. The fact that in that moment, for D Gordon to hit a home run to lead the game off there like that, for me, it just completely astounded me. And that home run, the whole everything that happened straight after, and actually preceding it too, because for those that and I was saying this to you before, Shaun, that before we hit record on this one, what you don't see in the clip is the fact that Dees actually, goes to the batter's box and takes the first pitch as a right-handed hitter in Jose Fernandez's helmet, I think, and maybe with his bat as well, if I recall. And so he then kind of switches the gear out, goes back into his own gear, and then hits the home run. It was, a wild moment and leaves you kind of just, the world works in mysterious ways. And that home run, for me, it was fitting and will always be fondly remembered, I think, by probably baseball fans. Did you watch that game? I don't recall that I watched it live, but did you watch it live and remember that moment in the moment?
I watched it live, at least the beginning of it anyway. For the home run. Yeah, no, his only home run of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a religious person, but it would give you reasons and pause to think so, wouldn't you?
It would. That's what I mean. It's just one of them things that you're just like, wow, the world is crazy. The fact that happened in that moment, D clearly very close with Jose, and it was clearly just really upsetting for him. And to do that, the baseball gods work in mysterious ways as well, I guess. But one of those moments when you kind of look back and sit back and reflect on everything. What was your take on it? Because my take was the Marlins handled it well. In the kind of the way Donnie was involved in that as well, I think was really important. But do you have anything that stands out for you in terms of the way that they handle stuff or the pressers themselves? I mean, it was clearly really tricky, and it's something they would have never wanted to have had to go through. But I think it was done tastefully and with class, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, there's no guidebook for this, is there? This is
no, there isn't.
Expect to happen. I mean, active players dying is thankfully, a massive rarity. But there've been a few, and there's a few names I can think of. But there's no easy way to do it. And the game was the next day. Like you've got no time to plan or to think about what you want to do. So it's all very off the cuff. But everything they did was, as you said, it was tasteful. It was classy. It was things that you don't normally attribute to the Miami Marlins. They did a really, really good job.
Yeah, they did. And it was interesting that they, remembering Jose on the Sunday game, I saw some images coming out where they had some flowers down. It was obviously the 6-year anniversary. Some flowers down, relatively small bunch, I would say. And so I think it was slightly underwhelming, the tribute there to Jose at Lone Depot. But nevertheless, always good to remember. And the other thing we should remember was, 2 years ago, they sealed their postseason as well on that day as well. So it's a significant day, will always be significant because of Jose's death. But equally, the fact that they sealed their postseason return in the 2020 year. And as well, I guess the other wrinkle is then that 2 years on, as the day that the news broke that Donnie won't be returning. So this day seemingly is kind of littered throughout, I guess, Marlins history now. But, it's always painful for Marlins fans. I think that's it. It always brings painful memories of what could have been, I think. And that's, and just missing out on seeing his prime. I mean, we may have seen his prime already. I don't know. But nevertheless, he was just electric. I remember Glenn Gaffner speaking to me on Fish Across the Pond and just saying just how amazing Jose Fernandez was as a guy, but also as a pitcher as well, and how electric he was. And, it's so sad to lose him in tragic circumstances, of course. And, the impact baseball wise is maybe felt, but it's always important to look back, Shaun. Overarching kind of view from you about Jose. How would you kind of summarize, finally, Jose Fernandez and what he means to you?
I think you worded it perfectly in the sense of we missed out. He was on this trajectory of being a fantastic player. We spoke last week about Sandy being the first number retired. I think Jose would have been that first person for the Marlins for sure. It's something that I will never forget, and I will never stop talking about him, and I will never stop remembering him, and I will never stop watching him. Those games are still there, And I mean it. If you haven't seen Jose pitch, or if you haven't watched him recently, go and do it, because you will not regret it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually was going to be the final question that I was going to ask you, and you segued me in there without me letting you know that you should segue me there. So that shows we're working well as a team here. But I have been dwelling on this actually over this, over the weekend, thinking about the conversation we had last week about, Sandy Alcantara. Is his number maybe going to be the first that the Marlins retire? Overall, considering what Jose brought to the Marlins, the community, the tragic circumstances, everything rolled together, do you think that really the Marlins should have retired Jose's number?
I would have done it personally.
Yeah.
I think the Marlins have always had a slight concern with the story around his death and
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah.
You're always going to get some comeback for that, but ultimately 3 young men made a mistake and they paid with their lives. I don't think that should stop us from remembering what a fantastic person he was and what a fantastic player he was, and what he means to so many people in Miami.
I completely agree. And I think it remains a missed opportunity. I think that and your point is extremely valid. And I think that can be the only reason why the fact that obviously there were other people involved and lost their lives along with Jose, and they may feel that there's a bad taste element to that of retiring a guy's number after, the accident, et cetera, et cetera. And I completely understand that. However, we're at a stage now where I think it's a missed opportunity for the Marlins. I think that they should look to right that in hopefully they will. Hopefully they will write that. And I think that everyone, in the main, the majority would embrace it. To your point, though, there will always be detractors, but there's always detractors about whatever you do. Everyone out there, there's always the trolls these days. It doesn't matter who you are. That will always be the case. So I'd like to see it personally. And I think a lot of Marlins fans would like to see that for what he meant to the Marlins. Shaun, I appreciate you sharing your honest views and thoughts. Unfortunately for me, I didn't get to enjoy Jose like you did. I wasn't a fan for long enough and didn't really, I didn't get to get the full experience. But I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and openness and opinions on this. It's a tough topic, clearly, but it has to be done. And it's when it comes around the anniversary, it's always good to reflect on Jose and what he meant. Guys, that's going to wrap us up for Tuesday's episode of Locked On Marlins. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day, and I appreciate it. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. A slightly different tone from me and Shaun, but nevertheless, I hope you've enjoyed it. Let us know you've been listening, and also please do share your favorite Jose memories, games, etc. Like I said, I haven't been able to see them all, so I'd love to dig in and see bits that I've missed and bring some more color and joy to my life. But of course, guys, I will be back tomorrow with Locked On Marlins on Wednesday, of course. So I'll look forward to seeing you then, guys. In the meantime, enjoy this episode. I'm back tomorrow.